G'day guys, welcome back to TRT Podcast. This is our Q&A special where you guys can send in questions and I'm going to do my best to answer them for you. Do behavioral problems always stem from the character? No. There's so many different things that can cause a behavioral problem. Having an awareness of course, the horse's history, the horse's level of, basic management of himself, being able to have a good analysis, an assessment of the horse is the greatest skill on a daily basis you can have. Doesn't matter if you have a horse that's perfect in behavior, doing everything right. You have a horse you have had for a long time, a short time, you're getting on the first time. He's 20 years old and you've ridden him all your life. You always want to know what state your horse is in. Who is my horse and what is he thinking? And horses can have behavioral problems from very early on, from the day one they hit the ground, from the way they were born. The process of birth can create different difficulties. Of course, the first few years of their life are, of course, really important. Horses getting into situations where they've had a seemingly perfect start in riding, and then they get into a situation, in their early years, 4, 5, 6 years old, they're put in a situation where they don't have the answers in that moment, and they have to rely on their natural instinct of flight, what Mother Nature gave them to protect themselves as a survival instinct. If they're put in a situation with not the information to know how to handle it, they have to kick into the flight state. This creates a sense of protection, a pattern in which becomes an insecurity, which creates a feeling and an emotion, which changes their thinking, which changes their behavior. That can have nothing to do with their character, everything to do with circumstance. The other really important one is, of course, pain, a pain-related situation. So the assessment part is really important, that you can decipher what is the cause, an assessment to really find out what the horse is good at, what he's not good at, where are the limitations, and where do you start to feel the end, the handicap, the block, where it's not possible anymore. I'm using my foundational guidance patterns, building an optimal order of movement in the body, creating a connection to the physiology, an order of movement that I know the horses can simply move in the stable, move in the paddock, move in the field, move in the arena, with a rider, without a rider, that their body has a pattern that is serving them and is not a handicap. Now, they may not have an injury or pain, but also if their body is not serving them, they're not feeling connected, they're put into a physical state that is the same as flight. It's the same as predict and protect. It's the same as if you're in a fear state. They become disconnected to their physiology. So when you don't have this good order of movement, a pattern in your body that's serving you, you can become insecure. You can start to develop levels of uncertainty, which creates protection, which creates a reaction, which becomes an undesired behavior, which is the thing we notice. And so going through my foundational guidance patterns, I really find this connection in the body, optimal order of movement, relaxation, flexion, opening the front and connecting from behind. Do they move with diagonal pairs, four-legged animals, inside hind, outside front? Are they in a tension pattern when they experience four main things: movement, touch, sound, and approach in the environment? These are elements in the human world that, when not knowing how to manage themselves in the presence of, they will go into protection. So how is this system functioning? This is the foundation to enable them to exist happily in the human space, the environment we brought them into. This is also the system I use to see when there is protection, when there is something not functioning, when there is discomfort, when there is pain. Some horses might find things a little bit difficult, and they're not real handy, they're not real coordinated, they're not so connected, they have a little bit of different order of movement. But very quickly, when you explain to a horse an optimal way of moving, and you can give him the feeling and the allowance of self-awareness, how can I do this better in order to let myself feel better, the horses will adopt that right away because it feels better. Single one most important thing to a horse is survival. Through that, he looks for a position of comfort, ease, and he will always choose the thing that doesn't involve fear. Why will he relax and move and follow us and not run away? Because it doesn't involve fear. He now has the knowledge. He doesn't have to run out of the classroom when asked a question. He has the answer. He says, pick me. I know this. It feels good. I have a sense of accomplishment, a sense of achievement, a sense of being in control of myself in the given situation. When there is pain, this will not improve. You will feel really where the blockage comes from. And so the diagnosis bit is really important, because you can go a long way with thinking, my horse just has a bad character. He's behaving this way because he doesn't like me. He's behaving this way just because, he was born an asshole, or he's been planning in his stable what he doesn't want to do, or his previous owner was really rude to him and abused him and treated him badly, and now he hates all humans. Whatever the situation is, if you can give your horse the feeling and the sense that he can find something that makes himself comfortable, 99.999% of horses in all the thousands I've worked will go for that. And so this diagnosis bit will enable you to find out what is not functioning, where he's insecure, what is the information he's missing, where is the body not working and not serving him in the order of movement that he's learned or not learned from us until now. And where does he have genuine pain? What is he trying to avoid? What part of the body is really not functioning? And these, for me, are sort of the sort of general guidelines that present themselves all of the time with horses that are behaving badly. Very, actually, never would I say he does this because of his character. It's always because of previous memory, experience, and emotion, product of his environment, of his history, of his past, that's brought him to this place and space and has given him the skills or the lack of knowledge or the demeanor or the expectation or the perspective that he has is through life experience. Of course, horses will have sometimes some generalizations. Certain breeds are more strong, certain breeds are more determined, certain breeds are more hypermobile, that makes them either happy-go-lucky or makes them a little bit insecure. There's also general traits in which you can say, these types of horses that are bred in this way, this kind of breeding, this mother and father, this color, the red mare, all of these sort of generalizations we make can give us a bit of a guide that sort of says, well, he could kind of be like that. But of course, there's many variations, and there's lots of proof that says that there's red mares that are totally sweet and calm and not the sort of twitchy horses that are difficult to get along with. So it's really treating them as individuals and not sort of saying, well, he behaves like this because of his character, and definitely not saying he behaves like this because he's always been like that. That's often for me the cop-out. That's the bit where you should say, actually, this gives me a reason to try to help him to feel different. If we think he can feel better, he can have a better quality of life through learning something that enables him to feel more in control of his situation and more comfortable in that situation. And so, character for me is always a positive thing. If I have a horse with a certain character, with a certain disposition, I have to understand what that is and let that be a guide of how I explain something to him. He's not doing something because he has that sort of character. But the character is important to understand, to know how you have to have a conversation, how you have to explain something to him. If you have a horse that is super sensitive and you think that he doesn't move because he's stubborn, and you start to try to push him around, and you've missed that he's actually a little bit shut down, he's a little bit afraid, and you start bossing him around because you think he's lazy, you've made a misjudgment, that horse is not going to get better in responding to your answers, and also vice versa. So the character for me is the judge of the personality. how do I have a conversation? What is his natural disposition, his feeling, in the way I need to explain and talk to him? And let the character be the guide of how you approach the conversation, not be the determining factor of why he is behaving in the way that maybe you think he is.